These are the stories of the most notorious cannibals sentenced for capital punishment. Albert Fish was born Hamilton Howard Fish in 1870 in Washington, D.C. In 1898, he married and had 6 children. His kids remembered him as a caring father. In 1917, his wife left him. After that, he started hurting himself. He pushed needles into his skin. He would sometimes cut and burn it, too. His actions toward children were especially disturbing. He lured them away by offering money or gifts. Once he had them alone, he harmed them, ended their lives, and sometimes ate parts of their bodies. He later claimed he had hurt more than 400 boys and girls, though the true number is unknown. One case stood out. In 1928, he convinced the parents of a 10-year-old that he needed her to help with a job. He took her to what he called a party. She never came back. 6 years later, he sent her mother a letter describing exactly what he had done to Grace. When asked why, he said voices in his head told him to do it. He also said he wanted to feel and cause pain. Experts at his trial agreed he was mentally unwell, but the jury said he understood right from wrong. He was arrested in 1934 after the letter was traced to him. At his 1935 trial, his lawyers argued he was not responsible for his actions. They pointed to his self-harm and the voices he mentioned. The jury rejected that. They found him fully responsible and ordered him to face the harshest penalty. Through his trial and until the end, he stayed calm. He even said going through the final process would be the greatest thrill he had not yet tried. On January 16, 1936, at Sing Sing prison, he faced the punishment using the electrical method. He ate the standard prison meal that day and refused any special request. His last words were,
"I don't even know why I'm here."
Our next case points to a mind convinced that body fluids held the key to his own survival. Richard Trenton Chase was born in 1950 in Santa Clara County, California. As a child, Chase wet the bed, set fires, and hurt animals. Experts sometimes link these behaviors to later aggressive actions. In his teens, he used illegal substances and faced problems with impotence. He pulled away from friends. He began to worry that he was very sick. He believed his heart might stop or that his body fluid was turning to powder. These fears grew stronger over time and made his mind less stable. In 1973, Chase went to the hospital for health problems that were not real. Doctors diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. He stayed in a mental health ward for a short time. His mother got him released. In 1976, he ended up back in the hospital after injecting vital fluids from a rabbit into his veins. The result? A serious, nearly fatal infection. They called him Dracula. He had a weird obsession with what runs through your veins. Staff were worried, but his mother took him home and stopped his medication without a doctor's advice. Chase's focus on red got worse. He began harming and eating animals, hoping it would stop his body fluids from turning to powder. In December 1977, he bought a .22 caliber pistol. On December 29th, he took a woman's life in a drive-by shooting. She was 51 years old. In January 1978, Chase's actions became even more shocking. He broke into another woman's home. She was 3 months along with her first child. He unalived her and reportedly used a yogurt cup to consume body fluids. 4 days later, he entered the home of Evelyn. Inside were Evelyn, her young son, her toddler nephew, and a family friend. None of them survived. He defiled their bodies in ways too disturbing to fully describe, and took the youngest victim back to his apartment. There, in a scene that shocked even experienced investigators, he carried out acts of cannibalism. His acts all came from his untreated mental illness. He thought these acts would shield him from threats he imagined. Police arrested Chase on January 27, 1978. They matched his fingerprints and followed tips from witnesses. At his 1979 trial, his defense asked for a second-degree verdict, saying his illness made him unable to fully understand his actions. The prosecution showed he knew what he was doing, noting that he wore gloves and tried to avoid being seen. On May 8, 1979, Richard Chase was found guilty and sentenced to capital punishment by gas chamber. While awaiting his sentence at San Quentin State Prison, he unsettled even the other inmates, many of whom were so disturbed by him they encouraged him to take his own life. Chase showed clear signs of severe mental distress, often rambling about Nazis and UFOs. On December 26, 1980, Chase passed away in his cell after taking too much of an antidepressant he had saved up. The next individual called it deer meat. What neighbors didn't realize was what they might have really been eating. Nathaniel Barjona was born as David Paul Brown in February 1957 in Worcester, Massachusetts. Barjona showed troubling behavior very early. When he was 7, he tried to strangle a 5-year-old neighbor. As he grew up, he used tricks and lies. He once pretended to be a police officer to take children without permission. In 1975, at age 18, he was found guilty of taking an 8-year-old boy and having unwanted contact with him. The court sentenced him to 18 to 20 years behind bars. He was later moved to Bridgewater State Hospital for a mental health review. After serving about 16 years, he was released in 1991 and moved to Great Falls, Montana. There, he kept his past hidden and worked as a short-order cook. While behind bars, Barjona spoke openly about dark and disturbing fantasies. After his release, those thoughts may have taken a much more real and horrifying turn. In 1996, a young boy went missing on his way to school in Great Falls, Montana, and Barjona lived nearby, with a known history that quickly drew attention. When investigators searched his home, what they uncovered was deeply unsettling. Before we get into the details, take a moment to like and subscribe if you're interested in more stories like this. Among the items was a handwritten list titled Lake Webster, which included the names of boys, with one marked by the word died. Authorities also discovered a series of coded notes that resembled recipes, containing phrases like little boy pot pie and French fried kid. Even more disturbing were the small bone fragments found buried in his yard, later determined to belong to a child estimated to be between 8 and 13 years old. Neighbors said Barjona held backyard cookouts where the meat tasted strange. He claimed it was deer meat, yet he owned no hunting gear or permits. Some people suspected he had served human flesh without telling them. Nobody was ever found, and Zachary's mother held on to hope he was still alive. Because of that, authorities dropped any charges related to causing him harm. In 2000, Barjona was arrested again on multiple counts, including taking children, unwanted contact, and trying to cause fatal harm to several boys. During his trial, a woman identified him as the person who tried to take her in 1974, but it was too late to take legal action on that event. A jury found him guilty on all current counts. The judge handed down a 130-year sentence with no chance for early release. Barjona maintained he was innocent until he passed away. On April 13, 2008, guards found him unresponsive in his cell. Medical staff tried to help, but he passed away shortly afterward. An autopsy showed he passed from a blood clot, and there was no sign anyone else was involved. He had struggled with obesity and diabetes, which had led to a leg amputation. There is no public record of what he ate last or any final words. He was 51 years old. But what if one person's darkness wasn't enough for them, and they wanted the world to share in it? Kevin Ray Underwood was born in 1979 in Purcell, Oklahoma. He kept to himself and worked stocking shelves at a grocery store. But he hid dark thoughts. He ran an online blog where he wrote about wanting to eat human flesh. He once asked, "If you were someone who ate people, what would you wear to dinner?" The skin of last night's main course. In April 2006, he lured a 10-year-old neighbor into his apartment under the pretense of showing her a pet. He played cartoons to keep her calm, but his intentions were far from innocent. At some point, he struck her and caused her to lose consciousness. Though he tried to carry out further disturbing acts, he stopped short. In an attempt to cover his tracks, he hid her remains inside a sealed container and concealed it in his closet. He even dismantled her bicycle, keeping the parts in his apartment to make it appear as if she had simply walked away. He later admitted he had planned these actions for months. He chose her because she was easy to reach. He said he wanted to put her head on his desk so it could look at him. He planned to keep the rest of her body in his bed for a day or two before cooking it. Underwood had many diagnosed conditions: autism, obsessive-compulsive thoughts, bipolar mood swings, post-traumatic stress, schizotypal personality traits, and unusual interests. His lawyers argued these issues should affect his sentence. The other side said he thought through every step and that his mental health did not excuse what he did. On February 29, 2008, a jury found him guilty of first-degree homicide. They took just 23 minutes to decide after seeing a video in which he admitted everything. On March 7, 2008, the jury recommended the harshest punishment. On April 3, 2008, Judge Candace Blaylock agreed. At his clemency hearing, he said,
I know I do not want to face the ultimate penalty, but I deserve it for what I did. If my punishment could change the past, I would accept it.
He appealed, but lost. On December 13, 2024, the parole board refused to soften his sentence. On December 19, 2024, his 45th birthday, the state carried out his sentence. His last meal was chicken fried steak with mashed potatoes and gravy, a cheeseburger with fries and ketchup, pinto beans, a hot roll, and a cola. In his final statement, he said,
I would like to apologize again for all the terrible things I did. I hate that I did those things. I wish I could take them back. The decision to execute me on my birthday and 6 days before Christmas was a needlessly cruel thing to do to my family. But I'm very sorry for what I did, and I wish I could take it back.
But what police found in the next individual's basement was far worse than anyone imagined. Gary Michael Hidnik was born in 1943 in Eastlake, Ohio. After his parents divorced, he lived with his mother. Later, he moved in with his father and stepmother. Hidnik said his father humiliated him over bedwetting. He scored 148 on an IQ test but had trouble making friends and handling emotions. He joined the U.S. Army and left with an honorable discharge after doctors diagnosed schizoid personality disorder. Between 1986 and 1987, Gary Hidnik held 6 women captive in a pit he had dug beneath his Philadelphia basement. What they endured was a horrific mix of physical and psychological torment. 2 of the women did not survive. After he unalived one of them, Hidnik took shocking steps to dispose of her remains, storing body parts in a freezer and allegedly cooking portions. Some reports even claimed he mixed human flesh with dog food and gave it to the others, though no solid proof of that was ever found. Later, his defense argued that he invented parts of the story to appear insane. Hidnik said he wanted to create a perfect race. He forced women of different backgrounds to stay with him so they would carry his children. He believed mixing races would bring peace. His actions stemmed from false beliefs and a desire to control people. In March 1987, one of his captives escaped and alerted the police. Officers then took Hidnik into custody. At trial, his lawyer said he could not tell right from wrong. The team against him showed he handled his money well and planned his acts carefully. On July 1, 1988, a jury found him guilty of 2 counts of first-degree homicide, 6 counts of holding people against their will, 5 counts of non-consensual intimate acts, and other charges. A judge gave him the maximum penalty. On July 6, 1999, he received his court-ordered punishment at the State Correctional Institution, Rockview in Pennsylvania. His final meal was 2 slices of cheese pizza and black coffee. He made no last statement. The next case started with whispers of prophecy and ended in one of the most disturbing sprees Texas has ever seen. Jason Allan Thornberg was born in 1980 in Cerritos, California. He later moved to Texas and worked as an electrician's apprentice. His early years were unstable, and in 2018 he was convicted of avoiding police and spent 2 years behind bars. In September 2021, over the course of a week in Euless, Texas, Thornberg took the lives of 3 people. He lured each person to his room at the Mid-City Inn. There, he unalived them. Afterwards, he dismembered their bodies in the bathtub and hid the parts in plastic tubs under his bed. Thornberg said he saw these acts as sacrifices based on his interpretation of the Bible. He believed he was chosen to carry out these rituals. He also admitted to eating part of one of the victim's heart. Thornberg went on to confess 2 earlier cases. In May 2021, he ended the life of his roommate by cutting his throat and triggering a gas explosion. He also confessed to the disappearance of his girlfriend in Arizona in 2017. Her remains have never been found. On September 22, 2021, Thornberg transported the dismembered remains of the 3 motel victims to a dumpster and set them on fire. Fire crews put out the blaze, and security cameras tracked his vehicle nearby. He was arrested on September 27, 2021. At his trial, his lawyers argued he had schizophrenia and was not responsible for his actions. The jury rejected that defense and found him guilty of a capital offense on November 20, 2024. On December 4, 2024, he received Texas's harshest sentence. He is now held under maximum security at the Allan B. Polunsky Unit in Texas. There are no public records of any final statement or special last meal. The next case happened long ago, but is too disturbing to ignore. In 1926, he resurfaced in Ferndale, Michigan. That same year, several women were found without their heads. Investigators had a strong suspicion, but no solid proof. The only charge that stuck came in 1927, when he was caught digging up graves and stealing a young girl's remains. He was sent to prison in Indiana. When Robinson was released on parole in June 1934, he went back to Cleveland and picked up right where he left off. The disturbing letters started again. But what happened next would move far beyond written threats. On December 9, 1934, he forced his way into the home of a man and his pregnant wife. He struck him with an axe, then shot him. His wife was struck with the same weapon. Robinson didn't stop there. He mutilated both bodies and took pieces of her remains with him. One child was badly hurt. The other, just a baby, was found unharmed in a crib. Authorities tracked Robinson down a month later in Shaw, Mississippi. A post office box led them to him. When they searched his belongings, they found the letters, the man's pocket watch, a packet of the wife's hair, and cured pieces of flesh bearing bite marks. Robinson confessed, saying only that he felt an urge to end someone's life. No further explanation came. His trial lasted just 1 day. Security was tight, with hundreds of guards on duty. On March 5, 1935, his sentence was carried out at Bolivar County Jail. Witnesses said he smiled as the rope was placed around his neck. He left behind no final words, no last meal, just silence. While the next individual was not a cannibal in the traditional sense, what he did was beyond imagination. Rudi Eugene was born on February 4, 1981, in Miami, Florida. His parents came from Haiti and separated soon after he was born. He never met his father, who passed away when Eugene was 6. Growing up, he and his family attended Bethel Evangelical Baptist Church. Eugene went to North Miami Beach High School and played football in the late 1990s. At 17, he moved to North Miami High School and finished there. After graduation, he held a variety of jobs. He sold CDs, worked at McDonald's, did telemarketing, and washed cars at a local dealership. He dreamed of owning a mobile car wash. In 2005, Eugene got married. That relationship ended 3 years later, with reports of mistreatment at home. He also had a record of legal troubles. 8 arrests since he was 16, mostly for illegal substance possession and 1 for causing physical harm. On May 26, 2012, Eugene was at the MacArthur Causeway in Miami when a shocking incident took place. Earlier that day, he had driven to Miami Beach. He left his car there, then walked back along the causeway, leaving behind his clothes and personal items, including a Bible. Around 1:55 p.m., he saw a 65-year-old man lying under the Metromover viaduct. Eugene approached him and began to harm him. He knocked Popo unconscious, removed his pants and bit parts of Popo's face, including the left eye. Popo lost sight in both eyes. The episode continued for about 18 minutes and was captured on a surveillance camera. A cyclist called the police. When an officer arrived, Eugene growled but did not stop. The officer fired 1 shot, which did not halt him. After 4 more shots, Eugene did not survive. People wondered if he had taken a synthetic substance often called bath salts, known to cause strange behavior. But tests showed only a psychoactive plant compound in his system. Some undigested pills were found in his stomach but never identified. Specialists suggested an unknown substance might have played a role, but no clear cause was ever confirmed. Because Eugene did not survive, there was no court proceeding. Popo lived through the ordeal but had severe facial injuries. He lost his left eye and all his sight. He had multiple surgeries and moved into a long-term care facility, where he learned daily living skills through therapy. He said he was grateful for the support he received. This event remains one of the most shocking, harmful incidents in recent U.S. history. We still don't know exactly why Eugene behaved as he did. The next individual took his obsession further by turning his victims into puppets in his own apartment. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was the older of 2 sons born to Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. In 1978, soon after finishing high school, Jeffrey met 18-year-old hitchhiker Stephen Hicks. He invited Hicks home, saying they would share some drinks. When Hicks decided to leave, Jeffrey struck him with a dumbbell and then suffocated him until he stopped breathing. He cut the body into pieces and wrapped them in garbage bags before disposing of them. After that first offense, Jeffrey's harmful behavior paused for almost 10 years. During that time, he joined the Army but left when his drinking became a problem. He returned to Ohio and later moved back to Milwaukee. In 1987, his actions began again. Over the next 4 years, he took the lives of 16 more young men. Jeffrey's methods were chilling. He would invite people back to his apartment and secretly slip something into their drinks. Once they were unconscious, he ended their lives in silence. What followed was even more disturbing. In some cases, he kept body parts, not just as grim trophies, but for consumption. He later admitted that eating parts of his victims made him feel closer to them. In his attempts to control and manipulate, he even experimented on people's brains, injecting harmful substances in a twisted attempt to create what he called zombies. What were his motives? Jeffrey later said he did these things because he wanted complete control over another person. He wanted them to stay with him forever, even if they were no longer alive. He said his actions did not come from anger toward any group, but from a strong urge he could not stop. On July 22, 1991, one of his next targets managed to break free and alert the police. When officers searched Jeffrey's apartment, they found photographs of bodies cut into pieces, loose body parts, and other clear evidence of what had been happening there. In 1992, Jeffrey went on trial. He admitted to taking 15 lives but pleaded that he was not responsible for his actions. The court decided he understood right from wrong and found him sane. He received 15 life sentences served back-to-back, totaling 941 years. The court later added another life sentence for a separate wrongful unaliving in Ohio. Wisconsin doesn't have capital punishment, and Jeffrey Dahmer was never on row. His end didn't come by law. It came by someone else's hands. Unexpected, unofficial, and final. On November 28, 1994, another inmate, Christopher Scarver, struck Jeffrey repeatedly until he could no longer respond. This happened at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. Reports say that before he passed away, Jeffrey said,
"I don't care if I live or pass on. Go ahead and end me."